So the earliest memory I have of a drawing I've done was one I did in my parents' coffee shop and restaurant in Brunei. And I was sitting there and I remember doodling a family. So you had your mom, you had your dad, you had your son and the daughter. And I was pretty proud of it, but at like age 5 or 6, my hand-eye coordination wasn't very good. And so this family looked more like a line of potatoes. They had very wobbly lines, and they also had limbs sticking out like starfish tentacles. But then I thought, hey, you know what, this isn't so bad, so I'll show my dad. And so at a very busy time in the restaurant, I showed my dad this picture, and he had like a super dorky smile on his face, and he said to me, "This is great. You'd be an artist. You're so good." So at 5 or 6, I felt very empowered and very encouraged. And it was really nice because around that time, this restaurant my parents had set up was also the first F&B like restaurant like endeavor they had ever set on. And furthermore, they had just moved us to a new country to do this, from Singapore to Brunei. So it was a very stressful period for them. And so any sort of like bits and glimpse of like genuine attention was I really, really appreciated it. And so I got really, really into drawing because of that. And so in this new country, I started school, and it was really hard to fit into school. I started actually at a local Chinese school, and for some reason, like, I don't know, my Chinese wasn't very good. But later on, at a later age, I moved into like an international school where everyone spoke English, and still, like, my English wasn't very good then either. And so I'd always felt more like an outcast. But whether it was a local Chinese school or like an international English-speaking school, the one place where like I really shined was over art sessions, art classes. It was where I got A's. It was where I felt the most confident. It was also where like my classmates recognized me as someone who could like do something. But the really interesting thing I think about like the school system is that you have math, you have English, and you have art. It's all very separated. It's all very much the subject, right? And I thought I shined most in art, and I learned at a very young age that the more realistic your drawings look, the more people are impressed with your art. So I used to spend hours looking like at an animal encyclopedia, practicing drawing zebras. So at some point, my zebra looked like a proper zebra, and I got better and better at doing art. So much that when I graduated from high school, I actually built like a little name for myself. I was known as like the art girl. And that came with like a lot of good stuff. It came with recognition, it came with confidence, it came with like, oh my gosh, this is like my sense of identity. But then the other stuff that came with was like, you're kind of like pigeonholed into like a stereotype as well. There was like this one really interesting time in high school where I think I was going through like a really sad period of my life, teenagers, their hormones or whatever it was. And my friend was so worried that she told the counselor about it. And so the school counselor called me up into her office one time, and I remember entering this office, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I sit down, and her name was Mrs. Caniford. She looked at me, and she says, "Yeah, I know you're going through a really hard time." This is the last 2 years of high school, by the way. So she goes, I know you're going through a really hard time, but just so you know, when you head off to university, you can do arts if you want, and you can be with people that you can relate to." And I didn't really know what that meant. And then she like picked up what's closest to her, like an apple, typical like turn apple. She picked it up and she said, "Look at this apple. Like a lot of people see it as just an apple, but you see it more than this. You see red. You see what apples symbolize." And I sat there. I was like, "Oh my God, that's not what I see." Like, but okay. Like, all right. I was like, "Cool. I'll be with my people one day, especially when I graduate from high school and head off to university." And actually, that's what I did. I did fine art as a bachelor's degree in England because it was just such a natural course. And so at 18, I fly off to England. I do my fine arts bachelor, and it was was just, honestly, I have to tell you, because of like the curriculum that our university had, it was that was like the strangest time. Like, I had grown up thinking that art was a painting, that art was a sculpture, that art, for me, successful art looked like a realistic drawing because I was like groomed to think that, right? But during my bachelor's degree, you had a bunch of different people in, you had these lecturers and like these teachers with really interesting opinions, so much that within our first year, one of the briefs that we were set, and only the first year we set briefs. Second and third year, it's all up to you. So in the first year, one of our briefs, it was called Zero. And we were told that for this brief, you can do something or you can do nothing, as long as you have a reason for it. And I sat there and I was like, oh my God, I could like not do anything for this brief and still get a grade for it. And so I did nothing because I was like, well, partially lazy, but also this is pretty interesting. And the other weird thing was like, so let's say like in second year, one of the teachers hosted a talk, right? And we walk into this lecture and all we see is a vase in the middle. So all the students line up in a circle because it's how the chairs are positioned. We all sat down and Mr. Collin, the teacher, sits there in silence and he goes, I want you guys to ask the vase a question. Look at the vase and ask it a question. We're all like, what does he mean? And he says, ask it where it's been, how old it is, what it's seen, who it's spoken to. And this just was like so abstract. So really it was 3 years in a fine art bachelor's degree. And really like what it did was it sort of helped me unlearn certain constructs, and it helped me realize that, okay, through the questions you ask and through what you see, like reality can be quite malleable. It just really like screwed my mind. It was really hard because you grow up in high school thinking like math, English, art, it all has its track, but in university during this fine art course, I was like, what the fuck is going on? And so I exited this degree into like the real world as an adult. And the really interesting thing was, it wasn't very obvious where my career was gonna lead, but I thought it taught me like a very, very important lesson that, the best I can encapsulate it is art is life and life is art. And that might sound very vague right now, but just through your own experiences, you might realize what that means. And that's it.